You've been lied to your whole life about what financial success actually looks like. Not by one person, by a system, by a culture, by every well-meaning adult who ever told you to save more, spend less, and wait for retirement, wait for someday, wait until you're finally ready. Here's the problem. Someday has an expiration date, and most people don't find that out until it's too late. My name is Dave, and I spend way too much time thinking about money psychology, retirement math, and the hidden cost of waiting. If you're someone who actually wants to build wealth and a life worth living, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this makes you rethink anything you've been told. Now, there's a book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And before you close this video thinking it's about blowing your savings at the casino, hear me out. This is not a book about being irresponsible with money. It's a book about being intentional with your life. And there is a massive difference between those two things. The core argument is this. Most Americans are optimizing for the wrong number. They obsess over net worth when they should be obsessing over net fulfillment. They build bigger and bigger bank accounts while quietly running out of the one thing money can never replace: time. Here's what most people don't realize. According to Federal Reserve retirement spending data and AARP longevity studies, the average American retiree spends significantly less than expected in their final years, not because they planned it that way, but because their health, energy, and desire couldn't keep up with their bank balance. You saved for adventures you're too tired to take. You saved for trips your knees won't let you go on. You saved for a version of yourself that stopped existing somewhere around 72. And that's the real tragedy here. Not running out of money, running out of time to use it. So today we're breaking down the 6 most powerful ideas from Die with Zero, with real math, real examples, and counter-arguments for every single one. Because this isn't a one-sided pep talk, this is a full picture. Let's start with Lesson 1. Maximize positive life experiences. At the core of this book is a radical reframe. Your life is not measured by your net worth. It's measured by the sum of your experiences. Think about that for a second. When you're 85 years old, lying in a hospital bed, and I know that's uncomfortable to picture, but stick with me. You are not going to replay your Fidelity account balance in your head. You're going to replay moments, the trip you almost didn't take, the risk you almost didn't make, the conversation you kept putting off. That's your life. That's the whole thing. Bill Perkins makes a point that sounds simple but hits hard. Money is just a tool. Its only function is to convert your limited time and energy into meaningful experiences. That's it. A dollar has no inherent value sitting in a savings account. Its value is entirely based on what you eventually do with it. But here's what most people miss. Most people flip this relationship entirely. They treat money as the destination and experiences as the reward they'll get to someday. But someday keeps moving forward. And your body doesn't. A 2023 survey of over 1,500 American retirees found that 61% wish they had prioritized experiences earlier in life. Not because saving was bad, but because waiting too long turned out to be expensive in a way they never calculated. The cost wasn't financial. The cost was experiential. They missed the window. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but doesn't this just mean spend everything and figure it out later? And I get it. That's the obvious objection. But that's not what this lesson is saying. Maximizing life experiences doesn't mean reckless spending. It means being deliberate. It means asking yourself, honestly, whether you're building a financial plan or just building a bigger number because a bigger number feels safer. There's a difference between comfort and hoarding. And most of us never stop to ask which one we're actually doing. Lesson 2. Invest in experiences early. Here's where the idea gets actually strategic. And if you've ever heard the phrase compound interest, this is going to click immediately. Perkins introduces a concept called memory dividends. Imagine you take a trip to Japan at age 30. That experience pays you emotional dividends for the next 50 years. You tell stories about it. You smile remembering random moments. You pull up the photos and feel something real. That memory returns value to you over and over again. Now imagine taking that same trip at 75. You might enjoy those memories for 10 or 15 years before your mind or your body starts to limit the return. Same trip, same cost, completely different lifetime return on investment. We understand compound interest when it applies to money. Invest $10,000 early, let it grow, and time does the heavy lifting. But we completely ignore compound interest when it applies to memories. The younger you are when you have an experience, the longer it pays you back. That's not poetry, that's math. Think about your single favorite memory from your 20s. That memory has probably paid you hundreds of emotional returns already. Now think about something you've been postponing. That's a dividend you'll never collect. Here's the kicker. Some experiences have hard expiration dates that have nothing to do with your calendar. Backpacking across Europe on a shoestring with nothing but a hostel reservation and a rail pass, that belongs to your go-go years. Running a marathon, starting a company on 6 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline, traveling internationally without a single itinerary. These are not things you can just schedule for after retirement. Your body has seasons. Your energy has seasons. And the compound interest on memories only works if you start early enough to collect. The traditional financial playbook says invest money early and spend later. Perkins says invest in experiences early too, because the return window is finite and you don't know exactly when it closes. Lesson 3. Stop living on autopilot. And here's where things get a little uncomfortable. Most of us are following a script we never consciously chose. Study hard, get a stable job, work for 40 years, save everything, retire at 65, then finally live. But who wrote that script? And does it actually fit your life? Think about when this retirement model was designed. It came out of the industrial era, a time when life expectancy was shorter, jobs were physically exhausting, and if you were lucky enough to retire, you had maybe 10 good years left. The whole system was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Today, life expectancy in the US is pushing 80 years and beyond. Many jobs are not physically destroying your body, and yet we are still running the exact same operating system. Delay everything until 65. Then begin. That's a 40-year holding pattern. Perkins argues that most people don't consciously design their financial lives. They drift into decades instead of building them. They make the safe choice, and then the next safe choice, and then 30 years go by and they look up and realize they spent their entire go-go years in a cubicle for a corporation that replaced them inside of 6 weeks. Now, I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow. That's not the point. The point is to actually ask the 3 questions Perkins lays out. What experiences matter most to me? When is the best time to have them? And what does enough actually mean? Because here's what's fascinating. Research from Harvard, specifically the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which tracked participants for over 80 years, found that the strongest predictor of happiness and longevity wasn't income, wasn't net worth, wasn't career achievement. It was the quality of relationships and shared experiences. 80 years of research. And the answer was experiences. So if you're drifting right now, running the default script, checking boxes, waiting for someday, that's worth pausing on. Autopilot feels safe, but safe often turns into regret. Lesson 4. Your life has seasons. This is one of the most practical frameworks in the entire book. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Perkins divides your adult life into 3 distinct seasons. The go-go years, roughly your 20s through 40s. High energy, high mobility, high capacity for adventure, discomfort, and doing things that require a functioning back. The slow-go years, roughly your 50s through early 70s. You're still active, still healthy, hopefully. But the intensity shifts. You want comfort more than you want novelty. You prefer a nice hotel room over a hostel bunk. You prefer a guided tour over figuring it out as you go. And the no-go years, 80 and beyond. Mobility gets limited. Health becomes the primary conversation. The world shrinks a little. You're not planning safaris, you're planning family dinners. Now here's the hard truth that most financial plans completely ignore. Certain experiences belong in specific seasons, and you cannot just move them around on the calendar like a dentist appointment. Climbing a mountain belongs in your go-go years. Backpacking abroad belongs in your go-go years. A luxury Mediterranean cruise fits your slow-go years just fine. A quiet family gathering at Thanksgiving fits every season. But the problem is that most people are deferring their go-go experiences until their slow-go or no-go years. And by then, the body has a different vote. And here's the thing most people don't realize. The financial math actually supports this. $1 in your 30s has different utility than $1 in your 80s. In your 30s, that dollar buys adventure, energy, and memories with compound returns. In your 80s, that dollar is statistically more likely to go toward medical expenses than experiences. Same dollar, completely different purchasing power. Not because of inflation, but because of biology. So the question isn't just how much money do you have? The question is, when does money have the highest utility for you? Because money sitting unused in a savings account doesn't earn you memories, it just earns interest. And interest doesn't hug you back. All right, real talk. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I'll do that when I retire," about something that genuinely requires your current energy? Be honest. Drop yes or no in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Lesson 5. Know when to stop working. Here's a trap that catches almost everyone who's actually good at building wealth. Just one more year, one more promotion, one more bonus, one more milestone. One more reason to keep going just a little longer. Perkins calls this the optimal stopping point. The moment at which continuing to work costs you more in lost experiences and irreplaceable time than it gains you in financial security. And for most high achievers, that stopping point comes and goes without anyone noticing. Because here's the brutal truth. Time is not renewable. Money is. You can earn more money. You cannot earn back your child being 8 years old. You cannot earn back the last healthy years of your parents. You cannot earn back your own go-go years once they're in the rearview mirror. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a 55-year-old consultant in New York earning $350,000 a year. She's been saving aggressively for 3 decades. Her net worth is already more than enough to fund the rest of her life comfortably. Her daughter is graduating college next year. Her parents are entering their late 70s and slowing down, and she's working 60-hour weeks. Every extra year she works is not just more money in the account. It's a trade. She's trading presents for padding. She's trading irreplaceable time for a number that's already past the point of meaningful impact on her lifestyle. At what point does the cushion become excess? At what point does excess become regret? Financial planners love to talk about the safe withdrawal rate, the percentage you can pull from your portfolio without running out of money. 4%, usually. Maybe 3.5% if you're cautious. But Perkins flips the question entirely. He asks, what is your safe enjoyment rate? What percentage of your remaining go-go years are you actually using? Think about it this way. If your net worth is already sufficient and you keep working another 5 years out of pure habit, or fear, or identity, you just spent 5% of your potential retirement on a job you didn't need. That's not caution, that's waste. Now, I'm not saying retire tomorrow with no plan. That's a separate disaster. What I'm saying is, calculate enough, figure out the actual number that covers your actual life, and then stop treating that number as a floor you keep moving higher. Because the goal isn't to accumulate forever. The goal is to convert. Lesson 6. Aim to die with zero. This is the boldest idea in the book. And it's also the most misunderstood. Die with zero doesn't mean drain your savings and cross your fingers. It means spend your money strategically and intentionally across the arc of your life, rather than hoarding it until the end when the window to use it has mostly closed. Here's the core logic. Every dollar you've ever earned represents life energy. Hours worked, stress endured, time traded. When you die with millions of dollars sitting untouched in an account, that life energy was never converted into anything. It just sat there. Perkins argues that your job is not to accumulate the biggest number possible. Your job is to allocate that number across your lifetime in a way that actually returns value to you, in the form of experiences, relationships, and impact. And here's where it gets interesting from a family perspective. Most Americans plan to leave a large inheritance to their children, which is a genuinely good impulse. But think about the timing. The average inheritance in the United States arrives when the recipient is in their late 50s or early 60s. According to Federal Reserve data, that's when most people are already financially stable and less likely to make transformational use of the money. But what if you gave that money earlier? What if instead of leaving your adult child $300,000 at 62, when they have a paid-off house and a 401k, you helped them with a down payment at 29, or funded a business idea at 34, or relieved student loan pressure at 26? Same money, exponentially higher impact. Because the utility of money is highest when the need and the potential are both still there. Now, and I want to be fair here because this is where the counter-argument gets real. What if you live longer than expected? What about a market crash at 70? What about a medical emergency that wipes out everything you allocated? These are not hypothetical concerns, they're legitimate risks, and Perkins doesn't ignore them. His answer is calculated planning, not recklessness. Insurance exists for a reason. Annuities exist. Long-term care planning exists. The goal isn't to gamble with your security. The goal is to avoid dying with 5 times more than you needed simply because fear was louder than reason. There's a real difference between a safety net and a vault you never open. Most people build the vault, and they call it responsibility. But there's nothing responsible about a life you never actually lived. Here's how I want you to sit with this. Imagine you're 78 years old. You're sitting in a chair by a window. Your phone is in your hand and you're scrolling through old photos. There's one from a trip you took when you were 32. You can still feel something when you look at it, not the details, the feeling, that specific kind of light, that specific kind of freedom. It paid you back for almost 50 years. There's another photo from a family trip when your kids were young. You almost didn't take that trip because money felt tight. But you did, and those kids are grown now, and that memory is, there's a word for what that memory is, and it's not nice, it's irreplaceable. And then there's a gap, A long stretch of photos where you were clearly present but not fully alive. Just working, just saving, just waiting for the right moment. What's in that gap? What experiences are living there that never got to happen? Here's the thing about Die with Zero that most people either love or resist. It forces you to treat your life as a finite project with a deadline, not to scare you, but to focus you. Because when something has a deadline, you actually start working on it. You have go-go years right now. Maybe a lot of them, maybe fewer than you think. Either way, they are happening, they are running, and whether you're using them or not, the clock doesn't pause for your savings account to hit a rounder number. The goal isn't to be the wealthiest person in the cemetery. It isn't to win a number nobody else can see. The goal is to fully convert your time, your money, and your energy into a life that was actually worth the effort. That's what this book is really about. Not dying broke, dying complete. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What is one experience you've been postponing? And not because of money, but because of the story you've been telling yourself about. When the right time is, figure that out. Schedule it. Don't wait for some day to show up on your calendar because it never does. If this shifted how you think about money and time, pass it along to someone who needs to hear it. Because the people we care about deserve to hear this too. Cash is king, but time is the throne.